Good morning, our viewers. We're excited to bring to you the first episode of In the Boardroom, a session where we deal with boardroom issues, burning issues in the boardroom, and also addressing issues around corporate governance. Here with me today, I have fantastic and phenomenal speakers. I'm happy to be the host. My name is Joseph Omojua, and I have person of Temitope Kolade. Temitope Kolade, good morning. How are you doing today? Fantastic. Temitope is a phenomenal speaker. He's a member of advisory board on NECA. Likewise, he's also an associate director of Anderson, Nigeria. Next to that is Oluwatomisin Modi. Good morning, Tomisin. How are you doing today? You're looking fantastic, actually.
Yeah.
All right. Tomisin is the country HR manager for Technology. Technology, as you may know, is for some of you know Technology to be tech experts. And she's doing phenomenal. She's doing an amazing job over there, right? And next, very close to me, is Ezekiel Akinlose. Ezekiel, how are you doing today?
I'm happy.
Fantastic, phenomenal. Ezekiel is a talent of his own league, right? He's the country finance director for G4S, as well as an ex colleague of PwC and is a board member on the G4S. So this morning, let's get into it. Viewers, we celebrate you for being online and for your patience as well. We're excited about what we are going to hear from our speakers today, the insight and how really you can handle board issues and every other thing as such. So I'm going to be putting a general question to our speaker today as we start. And this generally is for any of the speakers. You can just address it as you please. My first question is, a lot of companies do believe that it's not until we are up to maybe 50 or maybe we are capping up 1 billion or so, that is when we need a board to form a board. At what point in time do you really think that a company needs to form a board? I don't know, maybe, okay, you can go ahead, Tim.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, viewers. I think where to start really is what's the purpose of the board, right? The board sets the purpose of advice, right? Advising the company. To start with, we typically have the shareholders, we have the executive management, and then we have the board. So the board is like the bridge between the shareholders and the management, right? And the idea is that they want to take that fiduciary role to ensure that the company is run in such a sustainable manner that everyone benefits. And of course, there are things that are changing. I'm sure we'll get into that conversation pretty soon. But in the then talk about the phases at which you want to have the board. It's a question of growth, right? What does a company want for itself? Even for a founder-run business, there must be a time when it begins to ask for the advice of some persons who would act as a board, such that he's accountable to some persons, and then they help him to nurture the business. So they could set the role of mentorship. Right. And of course, it could come, the time could also come when you're now thinking of, maybe you want some investments from investors. And at that point, you don't have a choice. You've got to have the investors, have some representation on the board because they want to look at what is happening in the company. And by the time you go public, well, you don't even have the control anymore as such, right? You got to have those people that will see into that business going very well. So really the question is, what's the purpose of the board? It's for advisory. And for that purpose, if you think that you want your business to grow, you would welcome the idea of having people that you're responsible to. Even when you think that you own the business and everything is under your control, you want to be accountable to some persons for growth purpose.
Phenomenal. That's fantastic. One thing I could take out of that is the fact that, forming a board, it's necessary for growth. And then the board actually does it's more like a fiduciary, right? Responsibility, because of course they give oversight to the investors. And then of course, they have the investors to have this kind of trust, for accountability in the business. So fantastic. I don't know if anyone wants to share more on that, or we can move on to the next question.
Yeah. So I want to add, as a complement to what we have said, there are some specific sectors that demand, board composition, regardless of the size of the business. For example, if you are rendering a banking service in Nigeria at the moment, it is incumbent that you must have a board. For example, in the market where my office or my business, my office, operates, you can come up with a security outfit, a security business outfit without a board composition. As a matter of fact, a whole lot of due diligence has to be done on the personality of those board members. So it is important for us to know that, yes, for some specific industry requirement, the composition of the board is very, very, very necessary. And beyond that, yes, he made mention about growth. Oversight is very, very important. During my consulting period, I've, experienced some of founders run businesses where they felt there was no need for board composition, especially where you have the husband and the wife, running the business. So someone will tell you that there's an expertise from one, another complementary expertise from the other. But at the end of the day, when it is the time for growth, time for expansion, you don't have any option other than to say, I need to bring in, new people, experience, personalities who could provide technical, advice, who could guide, and a whole lot of stuff. So it is very important for businesses, for entrepreneurs to know that a particular time is coming very, very shortly as they take off their business to form a board. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Ezekiel. Fantastic. I believe Tommy wanted to say something as well.
Yes, I just wanted to build on that, right? Because I once worked with, a firm that, the chairman was the husband and of course the leader was the wife.
Okay.
And there will always be blind spots, right?
Yeah.
That you as a business owner would not see.
Yeah.
And it's part of the benefit that comes with you having a board.
Fantastic.
Because they look at your picture holistically, right?
Yeah.
This is the business or the picture that you've been involved in daily. So there's certain things that you would not have seen. And that's the benefit of having a board. You might not have it immediately, but have a plan to say, at some point in my business, when we have attained certain growth level, I need to constitute a board so that I can reap that benefit.
Fantastic. That's very phenomenal from our speakers. I think that's awesome. And just to add to that, I think many a firm also, need to also understand that even when you're forming your board, it is necessary for you to find competent hands who have their own specialization in different subsets of skills, right? And so building on that, right, Temitope, my first question to you, Temitope, building on that, foundation, right, that we've set, today, there is a burning issue in the boardroom, and it's pretty much about the regulations and the policies that, that the government are showing out today, right? One of which we can talk about KAMA Act. KAMA Act naturally obligates, the directors of organizations to evaluate the impact of their, business operation on the environment and the community, or maybe the NCCG Act, apply and explain theory that says that, there are 28 principles, right? And you have to also explain how you've been able to effect that. But this put a pressure on the management and on the board, and the investors are really pretty much about profitability, right? Their shares, right? So there is a question of sustainability versus profitability, right? How do you think the board can bring a balance or a check to this particular problem?
Thank you very much for that question. I think that to start with, whereas some people might see this as a tension, it's clear that it's like when a man without shoes or with shoes gets into a land where people don't wear shoes, or two persons, one sees the opportunity of making shoes for them there, and another one turns back and says, oh, these people don't wear shoes, so there is no point making shoes. Right. The additional responsibility, I would say, is something that opens up another opportunity. Right. So when we talk about IFRS S1, S2, for instance, it's typically about risk and opportunities. It's about setting strategies, having targets and metrics and all of that to ensure that the new rules helps to open up
opportunities for people. And so when you think about it from the point of what Kama now expects directors to do, of course, it takes it beyond just the financial responsibilities, increasing the bottom line.
Yeah.
But the point really is that if you want to increase the bottom line, you've got to also think about it from a broad perspective to say, oh, if you're going to have some compliance with respect to environmental stewardship, for instance, how does that help you to unlock more value into your business? And what people will typically do is that when they're doing things around ESG, for instance, they brand it as though it's the CSR. Some people say it's CSI, some people have different names for it.
Yeah.
And some persons will tell you that CSI is corporate social initiative. But the reality is that corporate social investment is what we now look at, such that
fantastic.
When you're putting in that funds into the business, or you're trying to get people around to look into your business as a good business, it's also something that promotes the business. It's like a marketing initiative, right? If you pay people, for instance, within an environment, say it's a farming community, right? And you have to settle that community. You're not just settling them for the sake of settling them. It's also to give you some sort of peace of mind, rest of mind to run your business. And so they become the security that you need, or the security managers that you need in that area to look out for the good of what is happening within that place. Because now you're building schools for them. Now you're doing things in their environment. So I once went to a business. I visited a business that is into power generation, right? In somewhere in River State. And what you will find is that they're also providing healthcare for the people in that community. They're providing school for their children. Education. And so when things are going wrong, because it's in the Niger Delta, people want to take over some of the things that belong to them. They want to arrest their staff, abduct their staff, and all that. But the community is then on the lookout for those people. They build that sort of partnership with the community. So what does it do for them in the long run? It increases their bottom line. Because it reduces the cost of trying to pay ransom for their staff when they're captured or when they're abducted, right? So if you think about it from the point of opportunities, it's what it is. It would unlock opportunity. And so what that additional requirement does for right thinking and forward looking board members is to say that how does this really help to shape our business in a way that it's not acceptable to society? Of course, you don't want to go into that realm of now doing greenwashing, or some people do greenwashing, or some people do green rinsing. And say, oh, we rinse it with all sort of green so that people can buy it. It's something that can be substantiated with actual activities that you are doing, and they are auditable. They have audit trails of what you are doing in that environment. So I think that's the way to look at it. Apply and explain from the NCCG governance framework, for instance, tells you that, if, for instance, you don't have the capabilities to do solar generation for now, can you explain what you're doing at the moment to ensure that you're still a very good environmental steward and you're doing things very well? And you can tell them that, because of the cost, because of certain things, and then this is why we're doing this now, but these are the other initiatives that we're putting in place to ensure that we're doing well. The reality is that we have a whole lot of things to get done. Right? But you can't do everything
at the same time.
Taking them one step after the other with the benefit of foresight for the investors and as well for everyone that has anything to do with that business, stakeholders, including the government.
Thank you. Fantastic. That was, I think you really said a lot of things that hit the point, talking about compliance, talking about sustainability, talking about profitability and the bottom line, and how the board can actually manage the pressure. I don't know if anyone wants to add something to that.
So I want to add some words. The ESG framework actually targets, the drive against so much profitability, in the hands of the business people, indirectly by saying, yes, the target is profitability, but what contribution, the portion of this profitability that can be plowed to the society in a way to support, specific environmental issues. I want to cite an instance. I've noticed a business entity in Lagos, for example, who provides this traffic warden framework, for the last mile officials as well as, the police guys at different traffic junctions. What that has done is that whenever there is a security concern about that business,